So now that you've written down some of the things that you think about writing or about yourself as a writer onto that journal, I'm going to stretch you a little bit and I'm going to give you some new things to think about writing, things that I hope will shape the way you write in the future. So, this is our agenda for today. I want to start with why thinking about writing matters. I mean, over the course of the semester, I'm going to ask you to think about what you're doing, your thought processes, your writing processes, your revision processes. I'm going to ask you to think about all those things, and then I'm going to write about it. Why? Because when we think about things, we become more aware of them and we can begin to question our processes and maybe revise them. Also, when we think about things, we can then begin to apply them in new ways. I mean, you're not only going to write in English classes, you're going to write in psychology classes and political science classes and biology classes, and the list goes on and on. You're also going to write outside of Southwestern College. And so if you can learn to think about why you're writing, you can think about how to write in new situations. So that's the why. I want to start with having you view your writing in new ways. I want you to identify the beliefs you hold about the writing process. You've started that in this journal, but I think you're going to recognize more things as you move on in this class. I also want you to identify what you believe about good writing. And by good writing, you're like, what do you believe is solid writing? Maybe you'll think about that a little bit differently. Let me give you an example. Sometimes my students write really good things and then they reflect on their writing and they say, well, my vocabulary isn't good enough. And I thought their vocabulary was just fine because it communicated really well what they wanted to say. But their words didn't all have 3 and 4 syllables, and so they thought that it wasn't high enough, it wasn't sophisticated enough. I don't know, sophisticated, not sophisticated, but it was effective writing. And so I want you to think about, like, what do you think is good writing? The other thing I want you to identify is the beliefs that you hold about your own writing abilities over and over and over again. I have students that tell me, I'm not a good writer. Writing is too hard because writing is not my first language. Or I've never gotten good grades. Or writing takes me a long time, so I must not be a good writer. And I want you to identify those beliefs because I want you to grow beyond those beliefs. I also want you to think rhetorically, and I want you to write rhetorically. Now, you may or may not have heard the word rhetoric before. Aristotle, an ancient Greek philosopher, defines rhetoric as the ability to determine the available means of persuasion. Let me put that into simpler terms. There is no single way to write. Sometimes when we are in school, we think, oh, the way to write is a 5-paragraph essay. Well, that's one way to write, but there are lots of ways to write. Think about all the things that you've read and how different they all are. So rhetoric is the ability to say there's no single way to write. What are the possible ways I could write? And what's the best way for me to achieve my writing purpose? I mean, you'll be writing for school, certainly, but you're going to write for many purposes. And so if you can identify the many possible ways to communicate what you want to communicate, then you can choose the way that will help you achieve your goals. So thinking rhetorically and writing rhetorically means you need to think about what you're doing, who you're writing to, and what is the way to write. Now, those 5 foundational ideas about writing that I want you to think about, write about, and even apply to your own life. First of all writers have more to learn. You might have done really well writing in high school, or you might not have done really well writing in high school, or it's been so long you don't even remember how you wrote in high school. It doesn't matter. All writers have more to learn. I have more to learn. That means that I've never achieved everything I can possibly achieve. And why that matters here is we're all starting off at different places. We've learned different things about writing in a variety of contexts, in a variety of ways, and we all have more to learn. So however you're writing right now, if at the end of the semester you've grown as a writer, this has been a successful semester. The second of the 5 foundational ideas about writing is that writing varies by situation and context. Let me give you an idea. When you were in 2nd grade and you wrote, that was a different situation. It was a different context. You're going to write differently now. You're going to write differently than you did in high school. And here's another thing. Writing in an English class is going to be different than writing in your biology class. Your professors are going to expect different types of writing for you, different standards of evidence, different standards of communication. And so get used to that. It's not just that one teacher thinks differently than another, it's the expectations of writing are different. And so if you can identify your situation and your context, then you can adapt the way you write, just the way you adapt the way you speak, depending on who you're talking to. The third idea is that writing is a process, but not the same process for every text or every person. We don't just sit down to a keyboard or a piece of paper and just, there's writing on the page. No, we have to go through the process. There's planning processes, drafting processes, revision processes, and those processes might differ. For example, if you're writing in a reflection in this class, you might just sit down, write what you're thinking right off the top of your head. But when you go to write an essay, there's a different process. My process of writing may be different than your process of writing. And that's okay. In fact, my process of writing is changing, and I think your process of writing will change over the course of college. That's okay. Go back to foundational idea number 1. All writers have more to learn. The fourth thing is that writing, or literacy, reading, writing, analyzing, learning, involves aspects of identity. Who we are, our backgrounds, our experiences, all influence the way we understand what we read, the way we write. And that's actually a good thing. Imagine if everybody thought the same way. How boring life would be. Here's the fifth and the final foundational idea about writing. Writers learn from knowledgeable peers. You're going to learn from each other in this class. I'm going to ask you to share the ideas that you have in discussion boards and in peer review. because we all have different identities, because we've all learned different things, because we're all applying what we've learned in our experiences to our writing. When we read each other's writing, we learn always. And when somebody else gives us feedback, we learn always. And I'm just going to say, all of you are knowledgeable peers. Let me throw in an idea about the Writing Center. You can get great feedback from the tutors in the Writing Center. Knowledgeable peers. Let me jump back to that idea, identity. Who am I? You've been reading what I've written in the syllabus, on the Canvas pages, and you're getting a sense of who I am. My character, my personality, my background, all come through on those pages. And they come through in the video too. So my identity is all the parts of who I am. You can see that I'm white, I'm female, I'm a little bit excitable, I like to smile. You might think, oh, she seems compassionate. She seems understanding. I hope that's how I come across. I hope I come across as encouraging and mentoring. And I hope those things come across in the way I write. Who you are is going to come across in the way you write. Why does identity matter? Because our identities shape our experiences, and our experience shape our perspective. And we learn when we listen to people whose identities, experiences, and perspectives are different than our own. I learn from hearing about other people's process, from hearing other people's analyses of the readings. Now you think, she's the teacher. Does she actually have more to learn? Oh, yes. Every day I'm learning more things. And I learn from my students. And I hope that they learn from each other, because our identities matter. We're never going to analyze things the same way, and that's okay. Here's this other piece that I want to share with you. We reveal bits and pieces of ourselves through our writing, and that's good because it helps us build ethos. Now, you've probably heard that word, but maybe not, and that's okay. Ethos is the persona that we share when we write or when we speak. Really, every time we communicate. And that persona, when we are constructing ethos, makes us seem trustworthy. It makes the people we're communicating with think, oh, I can trust them. That's ethos. And we communicate and build ethos in a variety of ways. Back to Aristotle, if we seem like we know what we're talking about, people might be more likely to trust us. But that's not the only thing. Flashback to somebody who seemed like they knew everything. Did you trust that person? Maybe not. Maybe you thought, well, they seem like they know everything, but they're not very likable. And so you didn't trust them. So Aristotle says, yes, we're more likely to trust people when they seem knowledgeable, but there's other things too. If they seem fair or objective, like that they're not just in your face telling you how right they are, but they go, I've thought about this in multiple ways, and based on what I've learned, this seems like the best way, or yeah, I really can see what you mean. But here's another idea. We're more likely to trust them. If they seem to share our values, the things that we value, we're more likely to trust them. If they seem concerned for their audiences, we're more likely to trust them. And if they seem like they're good people, however you define good, we're more likely to trust them. And so our identity, the way we write, helps us build ethos so that people will pay attention to the things we say, the things we write. Now I'm going to talk about authority, because when somebody builds ethos, they're constructing a certain type of authority. Now, authority doesn't mean that they know everything, but it's just that, I might want to listen to the person, share on that. And your identity is part of that, because your experiences, when you say this happened to me, you're building a sort of authority. You are building ethos. You are making your audience more likely to trust you. And so as you write in this class, whether you're writing just for me or your classmates might read what you're writing, you're revealing bits about yourself. And those will help you construct ethos. Now that's all I've got. Go ahead and finish the journal, and you'll see me on the next page.